Okay, picture this. It's Christmas Eve, 1945. A family home is full of life and laughter. But by the next morning, all that's left is a smoking ruin. The parents and four of their kids manage to escape the fire, but five of them are just gone. Not just dead, but vanished, never seen again. This is the unbelievable story of the Sodder children.
It's a question that has haunted people for nearly 80 years. Were they the tragic victims of a fire? Or was something much, much darker going on? We're going to dive into all the strange evidence, the bizarre theories, and a family's desperate, lifelong search for the truth.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're in Fayetteville, West Virginia. It's Christmas Eve. Inside the Sodder home, George and Jenny are celebrating with 9 of their children. The whole house is buzzing with that holiday excitement, new toys, happy kids, a perfect family moment. But that perfect picture is about to be shattered into a million pieces. So it's about 1 in the morning when Jenny Sodder wakes up to the smell of smoke. The house is on fire. It's absolute chaos. She and George scramble to get their kids out, and they manage to escape with 4 of them. But then, that horrible sinking realization hits them. 5 of their children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, are still inside, trapped in the attic bedrooms. Now get this, the fire department didn't show up for hours. By the time the sun rose, the family home was just a smoldering pit. The official investigation was, well, let's just say it was fast, and the conclusion seemed, at least on the surface, tragically simple. The authorities just ruled it an accident. Faulty wiring, they said. They concluded the 5 children had died in the fire, issued death certificates, and just like that, the case was officially closed. But for the Sodder family, this was not the end. In fact, their nightmare was just beginning. George and Jenny, they just refused to accept it. Of course, they were grieving, but their gut was telling them something was deeply wrong. As they started to piece together the events of that night, the official story just began to unravel. Too many things didn't add up. This was the first and biggest red flag. George started carefully sifting through the ashes of his own home, hoping to find something, anything of his children so he could give them a proper burial. He found appliances, he found melted coins, but not a single human bone. Nothing. And it wasn't just a feeling. Their doubts were actually backed up by science. They talked to an employee at a crematorium who told them that even in a furnace, which burns for hours at 2,000 degrees, bones are still left behind. The Sodder house fire? It burned for maybe 45 minutes. It just wasn't possible for it to have completely erased 5 children without a single trace. And the missing remains were just the beginning. The list of strange events from that night is just mind-boggling. Right before the fire, a weird phone call. When George tried to call for help, the phone was dead. The line had been cut. The ladder he always kept right by the house, suddenly missing. His 2 big work trucks, which were working fine the day before, neither one would start. This wasn't just a string of bad luck. This felt coordinated. So with the accident theory pretty much debunked, the Sodders became convinced that their children had been kidnapped, and the fire was just a diversion. But who on earth would do that? And why? Well, a couple of very disturbing possibilities started to emerge. First, there was a direct threat. An insurance agent had actually told George that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed after he refused to buy a policy. Then there was a political angle. George was an Italian immigrant who was openly and very loudly critical of the fascist dictator Mussolini. This kind of talk could have easily made him a target for organized crime. The arson theory got a lot more credible when a bus driver came forward. He said he was passing through town late that night and saw people throwing what he called balls of fire at the Sodder house. Even stranger, after the snow melted, a small rubber object, what looked like part of a pineapple-style bomb, was found in the yard. And that strange thud Jenny heard on the roof just before the fire started, suddenly, it all started to make a terrifying kind of sense. Convinced their children were still alive somewhere, George and Jenny dedicated the rest of their lives to finding them. They chased every lead, spent every dollar they had, and just never, ever gave up hope. And their search went on for decades. In 1952, they put up this massive billboard with their children's pictures and a reward offer. It became a famous, heartbreaking local landmark. Then, in 1967, over 20 years after the fire, they got something in the mail. It was a photo of a young man who looked shockingly like their son Louis. And on the back of that photo, this cryptic message was handwritten, Louis Sauter, I love brother Frankie. Can you even imagine receiving that? Is it some unbelievably cruel prank, or is it a real message from their long-lost son? The Sodders immediately hired a private detective to look into the letter. He tracked the postmark to Kentucky and went there to investigate. And then, he was never heard from again. He completely vanished, just like the children he was trying to find. George Sauter passed away in 1969 and Jenny in 1989. For the rest of her life, Jenny wore black every single day in mourning. After she died, that old weathered billboard was finally taken down. But the questions it asked, they still hang in the air. So after all these years, after all the searching, all the theories, the number of children officially found is still 0. There has never been definitive proof that they died in that fire or that they survived. And not a single person was ever charged with any crime related to their disappearance. And that leaves us right back where we started, with these same haunting questions. Was this a terrible accident surrounded by an impossible number of coincidences? Was it a carefully planned kidnapping by someone holding a grudge? Or was it a cover-up so deep that the truth was buried for good? What do you think really happened on that Christmas night?